Dear colleagues, in the Lisbon Treaty, when adding territorial cohesion besides social and economic cohesion was considered a big success. Many of you perhaps could remember. Now, it would be a great success for us to add political cohesion, but means to make everybody accepting that for a while inequalities in our European societies have been increasing within and between member states, and this is dangerous. To understand that the goal of our society, it is not economic growth without any limit, and closing the gap only on average. The goal, it is living in peace, preventing violence. We see appearing again. For achieving it, for keeping cohesion, we need instruments, mainly a budget worthy of this name, and reforms of those institutions and rules undermining cohesion, fueling divergence, the monetary system firstly. And we need political will to do it. For discussing these issues and for challenging us to debate, we have here two keynote speakers, very well known. I kindly ask them to use, at the beginning, 10 minutes each in order to preserve time enough for answers and comments after the interventions. I invite firstly Commissioner Corina Crețu to present the European Commission point of view. Commissioner Crețu, it is not my little sister, but she was my benchmate on the European Parliament. Before entering European politics, Corina Crețu was an advisor for the Romanian President and a member of the Romanian Parliament. She is a member of the College of Commissioners responsible with regional policy. Corina, the floor is yours for the next 10-12 minutes.
Mulțumesc, doamna președintă, dragă
Thank you,
Gabi,
Chairwoman,
ladies and gentlemen, dear
Gabi,
colleagues, dear friends.
dragi prieteni, dragi colegi.
Taking into account that I am in my own country, hopefully you will not mind to speak in my mother tongue. Îmi face o mare plăcere să fiu astăzi aici.
I am delighted to be here with you. I want to say that I am nervous because I come in this hall after 12 years. I've been senator in the period 2004-2006, and I left in the European Parliament for 2 mandates. I come back as European Commissioner after so many years. So I am glad to present the position of the European Commission regarding the cohesion policy. I think it is very important to have these debates together with the national parliaments and to talk about this policy that is the most tangible and with the highest effects in the everyday life of the people. This year spent as European Commissioner strengthened the conviction that we cannot have a European Union strong and integrated without cohesion between the member states and the regions. In the same time, we cannot have a competitive European Union, dynamic and prosperous, without the citizens to feel safe and to benefit from public services of the best quality, to have opportunities of individual and professional development. The European citizens have to share the belonging feeling of the same community if they feel discriminated, marginalized, or removed from the welfare endeavor. Practically, the cohesion policy has now political color. It's about and for the citizens. You know very well that European Union faces now important challenges like the management of the Brexit process, migration, border security, putting pressure on the Brussels authorities and the member states, and that stimulate the trends. In the same time, in this context, the cohesion policy becomes more important because it is one of the most flexible and innovating policies, offering answers to the tensions and problems in the European Union. I want to say that
Sunt fericită să vă prezint câteva
I am happy to present you some data from our surveys. The European reality is mixed with good things and bad things, with ups and downs, but with no doubt we have to stay optimistic. From the economic point of view, the convergence process has been a remarkable one. For example, for the 12 countries adhering the European Union in 2004, the GDP per capita increased from 51% from the average of the European Union to 74 in 2018. So the hope for a better life accompanying each country that adhered the European Union became realities, especially from the cohesion policy. And I see here friends, colleagues from member states like Bulgaria, Romania, Malta, where practically the cohesion policy exceeds 60% from the value of the investments in those countries. So, unfortunately, many regions remained behind given the depopulation, and here we have to invest more and to think of the regional disparities, where some regions for sure have faced with high success the globalization process. In others, disparities have increased regarding the unemployment. Meanwhile, GDP per capita stopped the convergence. But you know very well that in the last years the situation has become better. Unfortunately, we have regions and countries where the situation is the same as before the crisis, notwithstanding the support given by the European investments and funds, stimulated growth in the less developed regions, and towns contributed to reduce the differences in the European Union. You know very well that there is no town, country, region without being able to see the benefits of the cohesion policy, not abstract ones or bureaucratic ones that come to respond to the real needs of the citizens, having a direct impact on the everyday life of the people. That's why the efforts that we have taken until now, we have to continue them, and the challenges have to be tackled in front and with high determination. I would not like to say more, just to state the fact that to mention our proposal that for the period 2021-2027, for the first time in the history of the European Union, the cohesion policy has allocated the 373 billion euros that will lead in 80% in the regions having the highest need of European funds, the less developed. In the same time, I have proposed to the co-legislators, to the Council, more flexible tools, because we did not have countries or visits to have paid, receiving the complaints regarding the bureaucracy, and I received simplified regulations, and practically we will have one single set of regulations for 5 European rules. This is the final purpose, to make the life of the beneficiaries more friendly and to encourage them to use the European funds. We will have higher possibilities of transfer of European funds according to the necessities appearing. The cohesion policy for the period 2021-2027 will be aligned more with the agenda and the European priorities, being focused on key priorities like innovation, competitiveness, jobs, climate changes and environment changes. We will encourage more local initiatives, especially in the urban areas, and I hope this will bring Europe closer to the citizens. So practically, I believe that it's not just about money concerning the cohesion policy, it's about having quality projects, mature projects, to maximize the results on site to have real results and to succeed to combine national policies with the European ones in order to have a higher impact on the life of the citizens, of the European citizens. And from this perspective, the national parliaments have an important role, benefiting expertise, but also political and institutional tools, able to bring continuous improvements to the system of public governance and to assure balanced access to financing tools, especially to the ones managed at central level. Thank you very much. I wish you good luck. I am glad, as I have previously said, it is an honor for me and it's an emotion to be here within the Romanian presidency. For the first time, Romania has the presidency of the European Council. I am very glad to see you here in Bucharest, to see some of you who have confessed that you came for the first time. I hope you enjoy Romania, you will like Romania, and of course I hope to see each other again in Brussels. I am waiting for your questions. Thank you very much.
Commissioner, and now I invite Professor Daniel Dăianu, member of the Romanian Academy, former member of the European Parliament, former Minister of Finance, author of many good books, a leading voice in Europe. Daniel Dăianu, the floor is yours.
Doamnă președintă acestei sesiuni,
Chairwoman of this session and of the first meeting of COSAC in Romania,
doamna comisar,
Commissioner,
distinși parlamentari,
distinguished MPs
în România,
arrived here in Romania, member state of European Union, having for the first time the presidency of the European Council.
vă mulțumesc pentru că
Thank you very much for giving me the chance to express some thoughts
cu francheța
with the honesty that I usually speak, and those who know me, and also from my experience in the European Parliament, I still have it. And I have started in Romanian, and I will continue in English, and I will continue to express some thoughts regarding the friendships and the diplomatic subtleties, like are expressed in different debates where discussions have to reach, let's say, deep in the depth of the problems. I have entitled this presentation, and I will take it quite quickly. You have the text.
cohesion as a guiding principle for EU functioning and the role of the EU budget. But from the very beginning, I want to tell you that cohesion and convergence in the Union cannot be divorced from all policies and mechanisms in the functioning of the Union. It has to be related to the way the single market does function, to the EU budget, and to the international policy regime in the global economy. All this debate is a critical policy issue in the EU member states, not least in view of the huge challenges the EU member states face domestically and internationally: social strain and fragmentation due to the financial and economic crisis against the backdrop of unrestrained, unmanaged globalization and disruptive technological change. The euro area pains massive immigration and human capital exodus from the eastern member states, security threats, climate change, and not least rising protectionism. I heard several of you alluding, the French parliamentarian, he alluded to trade wars. And the erosion of international multilateralism dominate public agenda. Now, about the context in which member states are discussing the new framework, financial framework, I would like to single out a few aspects. One is the diminishing trust among member states between EU institutions and member states, a problem of legitimacy and accountability, And it appears that not in not a few member states, the social contract seems to break down. Not only because of this, inclusive policies are badly needed. Some even talk about the need to redesign the social contract. IFIs, most recently the World Bank, are highlighting the need to redesign the social contract. There are divides, and again, some of you have mentioned them. North-south in the euro area, west-east, with the latter highlighting a sort of economic emancipation of the eastern member states, which fear what we call the middle income trap. Some eastern member states have undergone massive human capital depletion due to migration, and this cripples the future economic prospects. And about Brexit, I should say that Brexit, if it happens in the worst circumstances, that would be an enormous blow to both sides, not only to the United Kingdom. And my personal opinion is that a special arrangement is badly needed between the EU and the UK for the sake of both sides. Not least, it's about the erosion of multilateralism and the emergence of a multipolar world, together with the economic rise of Asia. This raises a host of geopolitical and economic challenges. Now, when it comes to markets and democracy, I want to make an assertion that the very functioning of a democratic state requires public policies meant to ensure basic public goods. History shows that where social cohesion is badly damaged, negative consequences arise, and the social capital and the social glue get diluted, whereby cracks emerge in the democratic process that gives rise to social and political conflict. And I would also say that the backlash against globalization, unrestrained globalization, explains why there is a sporadic propensity, both in the West and the East of the Union, to turn inwards. Societies are turning inwards. And there is this rise of protectionism. Now, some say that people do not grasp the benefits of globalization. And I would say that to a certain extent it's true. But the problem with this assertion is that while benefits may frequently prevail over costs at the aggregate level, at local community level, costs may be massive and social dislocations hard to bear. So this is why the IFIs, the OECD, the EBRD pay increasing attention to the effects of globalization and to the thinning of the social fabric. And this is an ongoing debate in the Union, and the documents of the Commission of 2017 to a large extent point the finger at this impact on the social fabric of societies. Now, I will not dwell too much on legitimacy and democratic accountability, but it does pay to say a few things. The European project aimed to reconstruct economies after the Second World War, and it was a great success. This is undeniable. But the financial crisis that broke out about a decade ago underscored shortcomings of its decision-making procedures. And what Etienne d'Avignon said years ago, he said, that the EU institutions do suffer from a democratic deficit. So it's not enough to think about it. This has to be remedied. Otherwise, the backlash will continue, and it will be very hard to stop the advance of political groupings which question the Union. Now, about the EU budget and its track record, and I should say that I was a member of the Monti team of the task force, which produced the report on reforming the EU budget, and I'll tell you from my own experience in that group. It's explainable, but it's not necessarily fortunate that over the years the share of national contributions has grown to about 70% of today's budget resources, compared to about 10% 2 decades ago. The EU budget reflects the very low degree of political integration among member states, and I'm not afraid of saying it. Lofty words and great dreams are fine, But at the end of the day, we have to acknowledge the reality, the stark reality. The rebate system illustrates the transactional logic between member states, the way the EU budget is being debated each and every year. There is a transactional paradigm in its construction which builds on a quid pro quo logic. And this logic reduces the chances of reaching common goals and also of increasing the EU budget in a period when the challenges faced by the Union are overwhelming. This is the irony. There are differing and at times opposing views among the member states on the structure of the EU budget. Some member states do not think that it pays to assign so much resources to the common agriculture policy and to cohesion. Other member states, they think that much more should be assigned to R&D, dealing with climate change. Both opposing views are not to be viewed in a disparaging way. There is common sense in both views, but they need to be reconciled. I have a friend of mine, a very well-known academic, who works for one of the leading think tanks in Brussels, and he advised several EU Commission presidents, and he said that the EU budget is a relic. I believe that is a very extreme metaphor, because big economic disparities between countries can blow up the Union, can lead to the destruction of the Union. And I also believe, you could say, look, Mr. Dayano, this is a parti pris, Monsieur Dayano, il vient de la Roumanie. But I believe that it would be a mistake if the funds for regional development and the common agriculture policy were drastically reduced. And I'm happy that the Commission, still in place, has fought not to allow it to happen. The Commission made proposals for the funding structure of the next financial framework exercise and put on the plate, proposals for new resources. And I support using new resources and putting new resources to work. Now, how should an emerging economy see the EU budget? And I'll tell you again, I cannot put aside probably my intellectual and my Romanianist bias, but I think it does make sense to support an increase in the EU budget. And not because of my biases. I believe that the challenges are so huge and overwhelming that we'll pay dearly if the EU budget cannot fund the common goods in the years to come. So the financing of EU public goods in higher demand is to be supported, whether it's about border protection, development programs in the neighborhoods to mitigate immigration flows, and so on. In my view, and this is what I've argued for years, since I was in the European Parliament, the tax evasion and tax avoidance should be punished drastically. And this is something which would be valuable for both advanced economies and emerging economies. Big business practices a lot of tax evasion and tax avoidance. This is a reality. It has to be dealt with. And that could supplement the EU budget. About the Eurozone budget and the EU budget. In my view, creating a Eurozone budget does make sense. It's not enough to have a banking union. A banking union which does not have solid fiscal underpinnings is going to continue to be pretty weak. And a banking union which does not have a common deposit insurance scheme is going to be very weak. And the common deposit insurance scheme implies fiscal underpinnings. But a banking union is not enough. And risk sharing means both private and public risk sharing. And I believe that it is essential for the euro area to have tools to absorb asymmetric shocks. This is common knowledge nowadays, and it's accepted. What's not accepted are the new instruments. And personally, I think that there is need for a fiscal capacity, which should be quite significant. And last but not least, I believe that should a Eurozone budget be created, it should not hollow the EU budget. I do not think, probably that was politically the only way to move forward. But there is a danger here to place the euro area budget inside the EU budget. When it comes to accession to the euro area, to the Eurozone, which has both political and geopolitical implications, and Romania, like other new member states, is bound to join the euro area. Successful euro area accession hinges on controlling imbalances, having pretty low deficits, more robustness. We see the pains not a few countries have gone through in the area because of the lack of robustness, insufficient productivity gains, and competitiveness. This is why new member states would want to join have to have a consolidated, a robust budget to be able to control imbalances, to have achieved more of a critical mass of convergence. And I will also say that joining the ERM2, which is the anti-chamber for joining the euro area, is not less demanding than joining the euro area per se. And finally, I would say that we, in the emerging economies which are not in the euro area, we would be happy to see the euro area more robust, which means a euro area that undertakes reforms. And I'll finish by saying a few words on new conditions for access to European resources. There is a reshaped logic when it comes to conditionality. First, development funds, the cohesion funds, are not grants. These are not grants, in my view, in my humble view, given by some states to others, but fit the logic of creating a fair playing field in economic terms. The single market features many asymmetries. Secondly, the single market implies competition among member states. However, differences in endowment with the factors of production and the very different power of companies and economies shape large differentials among member states. Commissioner Kretsu, and for good reason, she has highlighted the substantial progress, advance achieved during the past 2 decades. And numbers do not lie. It's very much true. If you look at the new EU member states, they have achieved real convergence over the years. But this may stall. And in Central and Eastern Europe, we fear what we call the middle income trap. A regime of new conditions that would link access to the way a member state fulfills the country-specific reports can be considered. And finally, member states must respect the rule of law, the basic rules and values that underpin the EU. Thank you.
We thank you. But now we have already a number of 15 colleagues willing to take the floor, and we have to give up to our decision at the beginning to give everybody at least 3 minutes, I suppose. We have to shorter a bit our interventions in order to be everybody able to speak, and our invited person to make their comments and answers after. So are you agree with 2 minutes? Because we don't have time enough for three. So, not to lose the time, I give the floor to Ms. Agata Borowiec, representing Polish Sejm.
Okay, thank you. Dear parliamentarians, dear colleagues, the proposals concerning the MFF 2021-2027 and sectoral acts presented in May and June last year, containing specific proposals for programs and measures regarding individual policies, have been accepted by Poland with skepticism. It was due to the proposed scale of cuts in two key policies, cohesion policy and the common agricultural policy. Of course, Poland is aware of the negotiating difficulties in which the European Union has to reach a unanimous compromise and challenges that result from external factors. Therefore, the new EU budget has to correspond to the political ambitions of the European Union in the 21st century, but not at the expense of time-tested policies. Let us remember the key indicator, European added value, that manifests itself in cohesion policy and the common agriculture policy, because it concerns all our citizens. The economy of Europe is a system of connected vessels, where higher prosperity in one member state translates into higher prosperity in the other countries. The scale of proposed reduction of funds for cohesion policy, which, for example, for Poland is as high as 23%, is unjustified. That is why Poland, jointly with a group of states, is calling for cohesion policy funding not to be reduced. I'd like to point out that Poland declares its readiness to increase national contributions and calls for new challenges to be financed from new funds, rather than through transfer of funds from existing policies. Finally, I'd like to appeal to all member states in the EU institution to show greater flexibility during the financial negotiations and to listen more carefully to voices and arguments from all European capitals to avoid a situation where EU policies are implemented at the expense of one group of countries. Thank you.
We thank you. And now the new member of the Troika, Mr. Arto Satonen from Finland.
Chair, Madam, I would like to thank the keynote speakers and Romanian presidency for presenting the background of this debate. Cohesion and convergence mean different things in different places and in different times. All of us, as national politicians, face domestic cohesion concerns, as every member state includes regions in need of support. Cohesion policy cannot be divorced from broader macroeconomic policy. We are all committed to a policy of macroeconomic stability, and that is very important. Political limits to member states' overall spending will affect support for transfers to European projects. In today's Europe, cohesion and convergence have political and ethical implications in addition to the economic metric. Solidarity among member states is strong. Our voters want all Europeans to share in the Union's benefits. These benefits include the rule of law and good governance, access to education, innovation and research, in short, everything that makes all of Europe more competitive. And finally, Finland supports the Romanian presidency in its work on the MFF and is ready to take the torch in July. Thank you.
The next speaker is Domagoj Ivan Milosevic from Croatia.
Good afternoon. Congratulate the Romanian presidency and two of you chairs. Big thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, let me start by saying that apart from the many positive effects that my country gained through the membership to European Union, the biggest challenge for Croatia is emigration. So we are losing by now hundreds of thousands of young, educated and less educated people, which we need obviously both to build the competitive economy. I strongly believe that internal migrations within the Union do jeopardize social, economic and eventually the political stability of many less developed member states. This means, and I emphasize, the political stability of the Union. On the short or in the short and the midterm, I'm afraid even more than the external migrations. I kindly ask all the net contributing member states to rethink twice their approach towards cohesion policy, the multi-annual financial framework and the future convergence process. I fully understand that cutting spending fuels Euroscepticism in the east and the south of the Union, and at the same time, exactly the opposite effect in the west of the Union. But we do need to find reasonable common ground and explain to our citizens the idea of cohesion and the convergence process. To much extent, this convergence issue may define what kind of eastern and the southern neighbors you in the West will have in next 10 to 20 years. I am sure and I do hope within the European Union. Thank you.
And now we give the floor to Mr. Richard Horčík, our colleague from the Hungarian Parliament.
Thank you, the floor, Madam Chairperson. Dear Madam Commissioner, I found MFF as an important tool in increasing cohesion on EU level, and it is obvious that the Central European region become one of the engines of the economic growth in the European Union. Madam Chairperson, I clearly support the approach of the so-called friends of cohesion countries, and I'm still convinced that we need more time to make a real progress on the MFF dossiers. Speaking about the cohesion in general, I see sort of varying tendencies in Europe, particularly within the single market. I would call it the threat of cherry picking and protectionism, as European Union measures intend to discourage, for example, posted workers or lorry drivers from Central and Eastern European member states from providing services. I simply cannot accept that a divergence of national wages, which comes from economic and historical peculiarities, to be considered as an unfair competitive advantage. Last but not least, one more remark on MFF, where member states are often wrongly labeled as net beneficiaries or net contributors. If you look at the structural funds more closely or in details, you all admit that it is a win-win policy both for the less developed regions and large, mainly Western European firms. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now I take the floor to give the floor, to Regina Bastos from Portugal.
Thank you, dear chairs, dear colleagues. A first word to congratulate the Romanian presidency of the Council and to wish all the best in your important mission in this semester, time of so many and huge challenges. The new multi-annual financial framework will be fundamental for the future of the EU. And the challenge ahead is trying to limit the loss of funds caused by the Brexit and gathering the funding of new policies like migration and security while maintaining the focus on cohesion and solidarity amongst all member states. Sorry to say, but this was not the approach followed by the initial proposal of the European Commission, since the cohesion policies found suffered a cut of 6%, and the common agriculture funds were cut around 5%, and in its second pillar, the cut is 15%. All of us know very well that both these policies are fundamental to ensure convergence and to increase social cohesion. The new EU priorities cannot be financed with prejudice of the cohesion and agriculture policies. That said, we also say that we strongly agreed with the resolution from the European Parliament at the last November stating that the funding for cohesion policies and common agriculture policy should remain the same, and in order to budget to be able to fund also the new priorities, the assignment levels should reach at least 1%. Thank you very much.
Muito obrigada, Regina. Next speaker, Aron Farrugia, our colleague from House of Representatives, Malta.
Thank you, Chair. Madam Commissioner, Malta will always remain a friend of cohesion member, even if Malta will experience the biggest cuts from all member states, 24%, and that goes up to 30% if we take into consideration the increase in population. Not just this, all this while our contributions since 2014 will double in the coming years. Well, we support cohesion. We are grateful for Commissioner Crețu for supporting the national safety net up to 76% and the widening of the bracket for those countries who are in transition. Of course, we believe this should now go further down than it has already. As for cohesion policy, we believe that apart from continuing assisting less developed regions to achieve convergence, the progress that has been made to date in the transition and more developed countries and regions must be consolidated, nurtured, and sustained, of course, to ensure that these regions do not lose momentum or stagnate in a position where they are unable to adequately compete within the single market. We of course, support a degree of flexibility and further simplification in the next MFF. And when it comes to financial instruments, we do support them too, but we believe they should complement rather than replace EU cohesion grants. When it comes to the European semester, we believe that the way forward should be to follow a tailor-made approach rather than a one-size-fits-all arrangement, which I believe risks stifling the very objectives and results we want to achieve. When it comes to Horizon 2020 and other programs relating to direct funds, I think there should be geographical distribution or ameliorated geographical distribution. Finally, when it comes to GNI-based own resources, therefore the own resources we are discussing in the current period, Malta is against the financing of the EU budget through taxes, since it is firmly believes that fiscal policy should be decided upon by individual member states to safeguard national sovereignty. And one final remark, the degree, and here I close, of political ambition should shape the content and magnitude of the EU budget, the MFF, and not vice versa. Thank you.
I thank you. And now, Jaroslaw Obremski, representative of the Senate in Poland.
Thank you. First of all, my respect for the speech of Daniel Dajanu. Thank you very much. And in Poland, we understand that the EU has a new challenge, new task, and we want to pay for them. But on the other hand, we couldn't accept cutting of cohesion funds because we treat it as a break enlargement agreement. When we open our market, conditions of asymmetry as a result of free market, And we were conscious what this means for Polish banks, supermarkets, shipyards, and mines. And for the even flatten the chance, necessary was and is cohesion fund. First of all, for in the infrastructure, the key for better competitiveness in the future. Without it, we will create it not only Europe, different speed, but also different standards. Not only in financial level. We observe that in Eurozone, gap between the poorest and richest countries increase. This is danger. Division EU between richer and more poor is the best way for undermine EU. Remember, cohesion is also a common value. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, Arzu Erdem, Grand National Assembly of Turkey.
Thank you very much, dear Chair, dear colleagues, and Madam Commissioner. The global economical situation in general and all around the world, a lot of people think that their economical future is bleak. So that's the reason why we have to come near and closer. Therefore, the European Union membership is a strategical and also financial goal for our country. As you know, presently Turkey is the biggest 7th economy of the world and the biggest 6th economy in European Union. So therefore, we have an agreement, a customs union agreement. The European Union and Turkey are linked by a customs union agreement which came into force in 1995. As you know, the update and upgrading of the customs union agreement is not being done by European Union. So it's very important for the economical growth of Turkey and also for the economical growth of European Union countries, with whom we have close relations in business areas. It's very important for us that the customs union agreement was being updated in the near future. Also, as all our colleagues well know, we have signed a readmission agreement with European Union on migration issues. Turkey has done its share to do all the best what we can do. Under the framework of 18th of March, we do that assignment. And it's very important for us that the European side to their obligations also. There was a payment, was being done, 3 billion euros, and the second part, 3 billion euros, should be done, I think, in the near future. Also, I have to remark, it's very important for us that Turkey should be understood very well by our European Union friends. We have spent $30 billion for the refugees in Turkey. So we spend a big effort, first of all, that's very important. And the promise for a visa liberalization, as you know, we have fulfilled 66 facilities, and there are only 6, and we will do our best. We need the support of yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now I give the floor to my colleague Viorel Ilie, a member of our committee and Minister for Relations with the Parliament.
Vă mulțumesc, doamnă președintă. Distins prezidiu, dragi colegi.
Thank you, Mrs. Chairwoman, distinguished colleagues. The European Union is not complete without Romania. The natural place of Romania is in the center of the Schengen area, said President Juncker during the speech at the Romanian Athenaeum. It's not a simple statement. Mr. Juncker believes in this, and we believe that our place is in the European Union, and we want to be as better as is integrated in the European family. That's why the Romanian government launched the motto "Cohesion, European value." Cohesion is explained as that intense, tight connection. This is what we want from the European Union, that each citizen be able to feel this tight relation in all the dimensions of the cohesion policy. The European Parliament has always supported the fact that the accession of Romania to Schengen, the countries blocking this accession, I asked them to change their position, supported also the President Tajani. But Romania and Bulgaria are not in Schengen. It's just an example, and I will stop here, but it's a relevant example of what means trust, ladies and gentlemen. And trust, dear colleagues, is essential for a community in order to be able to function. The biggest advantage of the European Union is that by the cohesion policy, it succeeds to gain trust of the European citizens. We are all aware of the fact that without the cohesion policy, regional disparities at the level of the EU would have been bigger. Moreover, cohesion policy succeeded something extraordinary to bring European Union closer to the citizens and led to the improvement of everyday life. I tell you this as a former mayor using the cohesion funds in order to increase the life level of the citizens. That's why if the European Union wants to consolidate the position, it has to answer to the new challenges by more cohesion. And this thing can be achieved only by an appropriate budget. Simplifying the cohesion policy and having a correct budget will help us to increase the belonging degree. I conclude with a remark. The cohesion policy is about and for the citizens, stated Commissioner Crețu, but the European Union is not also about citizens and Europe. That's why I believe that we cannot have a European Union for the citizens without an appropriate cohesion policy. Thank you very much.
Is Bojan Kekec, National Council of Slovenia.
Thank you for the floor. Allow me a few words about the cohesion policy in connection of the future of the European Union. Cohesion policy is still one of the key financial tools used for balanced development of regions, improve transport links, and boost sustainable development, but many of cohesion mechanisms are difficult to implement in practice. After one multi-annual financial framework ends, we often lack real evaluation mechanism which would show the impact of cohesion policies on regions which will aim to adopt these mechanisms. When thinking of cohesion, we often think on GDP growth and often forget social cohesion, especially the implication of cohesion policies on young Europeans. We have to bear in mind that new infrastructure, buildings and programs without substance lack the essence, which is aimed to strengthen the link between the European Union and European Union citizens, especially young Europeans. We have to be aware that the population in the European Union is aging, and to concentrate our policies on building opportunities for young people, especially family, education, job creation and housing policies. The current lack of these policies is showing its consequences in growing Euroscepticism, and if the turnout on this European Parliament election will be low, we have to do even more to strengthen the link between the citizens and the European Union. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Maintenant, Marc Angel, le président de la Commission des Affaires européennes de la Chambre des députés Luxembourg.
Oui, merci Madame la Présidente, merci à la Roumanie pour l'excellente organisation.
President of Luxembourg, thank you very much for the good organization. I would like to start with a general remark. This morning I didn't have the occasion to express myself, but I can say that we have spoken a lot about the European elections, very important in order to assure the progress in Europe. We all know that ministers are co-legislators. We have had elections in Luxembourg in October, and the pro-European parties defending the European values, saying to the citizens that Europe has to cost more because it has more problems to solve, have succeeded, and the nationalist and against Europe parties lost in a country with 48 foreigners present on the territory. In what regards cohesion and convergence, I think that the biggest problem that Europe has to solve is the cohesion between the countries, between regions, and it will allow to the citizens to assess if Europe is really successful or not. Our government asks an increase of the budget and the reform of the own resources, among which to impose new standards regarding the CO2 emissions and digital companies. So it's about the effect over the big companies here than over the citizens, and we would like to work upon it in the future years to come.
Estonia.
Thank you, Ms. Chair. The EU budget must look into the future. First, our future will be digital, and this should be well reflected in all policy areas of the budget. Funds directed to research and innovation, research and development should not be reduced. Second, cohesion policy is the key investment policy of the EU. Cohesion policy is an excellent framework for structural reforms. It should be oriented even more to reforms and competitiveness. Estonia faces one of the largest cuts in cohesion funding by 24%. And our national co-funding rate would rise from 50% to 45%. These changes should be more gradual. Third, Europe needs connectivity. We need to continue developing transport and energy network to connect different parts of the EU single market to each other. This means completing cross-border missing links. Thank you very much.
We thank you. And now we give the floor to our colleague representing Norway, Mr. Svein Roald Hansen.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the warm welcome here in Bucharest. While not a member of EU, I would like to say that the MFF is also of great importance to Norway. Norway participates in a number of EU programs, among them the Horizon 2020 and Erasmus, and we will continue to do so. Norway is also contributing significantly to cohesion and convergence in the EU through the Norway grants and the EEA grants together with Iceland and Liechtenstein, to reduce economic and social disparities in the EEA and to strengthen bilateral relations with 15 EU countries in Central and Southern Europe and the Baltics. For the EEA and Norway grants from 2014 to 2021, a total contribution for 2.8 billion has been agreed, and the priorities reflect the priorities of the EU and aim to respond to the shared challenges. I have myself been to Romania twice to look at how EEA and Norway grants contribute positively to increased cooperation, sustainable growth and social development. In the current program period, a new transnational component has been introduced through a fund of regional cooperation, which include 10 non-EU nations, including 5 on the Western Balkans, and also a new fund for youth employment, which aims to support measures that promote youth employment across Europe. I fully support what Daniel Dayanu said about the importance of cohesion and convergence in the internal market. That's why Norway and our EA partners participate in this endeavor through the EA grants. Thank you.
We thank you. And now is the latest speaker, Sergio Batelli, Chamber of Deputies, Italy. Please.
Grazie, Presidente. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to thank all colleagues for this very fruitful and interesting meeting. The multi-annual financial framework is an indispensable tool for the European Union because it defines spending goals, spending targets for the future, and in doing so, it defines the priorities and goals of the European Union. The Italian Parliament is examining in detail the financial framework, but we know that it is not very likely for the MFP to be adopted within the current legislative term of the European Parliament. We want to, of course, the main aim of the MFF is to reduce disparities. We must promote sustainable development and then integrate development of welfare standards. This is the only way for all citizens of the member states to really feel a sense of belonging to the European Union. We must reinvest in the primary sector because the primary sector underlies all progress in other economic sectors. Last but not least, we must increase funds for migration policies in order to promote a really shared approach. I'd like to invite all member states not to assume that the Balkan route is the only existing route. Let's not turn a blind eye to what is going on in these very hours in the Mediterranean. In this respect, allow me to say that my heart goes out to the victims of the latest shipwrecks. Europe must be strong, must be based on solidarity, must be inspired by solidarity and shared goals. I hope that the next Parliament will adopt policies that are fully corresponding to these needs. Thank you.
We ask our keynote speakers to make their comments and to answer to your questions, starting in the order they decide.
Thank you very much. For me, it was a pleasure to hear from you. I know that it's not an easy discussion about the next multi-annual financial framework, but you know very much that you know very well that the Commission has presented a balanced financial framework for post-2020, which I think is both realistic and ambitious. Of course, as you know, we have to take into account a wide range of issues, as I said in the beginning, like Brexit, the need to provide support for the new priorities, and the need to ensure support for our regions and cities. For me, the most important thing is that we had preserved this cohesion policy for all regions. You know very well that in the beginning it has been a discussion to preserve this cohesion policy just for some member states. And I really think that we don't need new divisions in our policy. I know very well that some of you may have wished for more funds from the EU budget, but this cannot and should not be our only consideration. For me, having a simpler, easier cohesion policy still available for all regions is what is the most important. So I've heard your point of view. For instance, to honorable members from Poland, I would like to say that many new member states made impressive social economic progress since they become members, and the natural consequence of getting richer is a gradual decrease in cohesion policy support. This is the logic of cohesion policy. The richer you are, you receive the less funds. And this is a case of Poland, for instance, and other member states. We can see as a fact, as a good thing, that when Poland has arrived in the European Union, the GDP per capita was somewhere at 55, and now it's almost as net contributors. Personally, I don't like this this division between net contributors and net beneficiary, because for me, all member states are the winners of cohesion policy, directly, indirectly, or both. So the EU budget is about investments which add value across Europe, not a simple redistribution of money. So to respond, I would like just to say that we are using for a new financial framework the same method that we have used until from '99. We call it Berlin method, which 80% is GDP per capita. And in fact, many member states, if we wouldn't have introduced this safety net, would have lost much more than now. At the end of the day, this proposal is now in the hands of European Parliament and European Council as co-legislators. And I would like just to say that I am very grateful that Romanian authorities put cohesion policy as in the center and as a priority for Romanian presidency. I really hope in terms of timing that we will achieve to have an agreement during Romanian presidency before European elections, because it's really very important to start the implementation of the new budget from the 1st of January 2021. Otherwise, we should prove that. Otherwise, we would think that we didn't learn from the lessons of the past, because we have delays in all member states now because of the late adoption of the legislation. It's very important for us, for each country, to start the implementation of the new projects as I said, from the beginning of programming period. I know that there are a lot of differences between member states, but at the end of the day, we have to come to the agreement. And really, I think using GDP per capita, of course, and introducing some new elements like youth unemployment and the brain drain and the depopulation, and I think will be very important. Anyhow, thank you very much for all of you being here. For me, it is a pleasure always to meet with national parliaments. You have a great say in your countries. You know very well that usually I'm going in the member states and I'm visiting national parliaments, like I did it in December in Portugal, in Malta, in every country I go. I see Austrian. I would like to thank for the progress that we have made during the Austrian presidency, but of course we have to speed up all the negotiations, and in our view, I think it's very important, as I said, to have an agreement both on the MFF as such and on the regulations as soon as possible. What I would like to say at the end that from our point of view, the European Commission, our services are fully engaged and prepared to back and to support Romanian presidency to make the progresses in this way. Thank you very much once again. I wish you good luck and good stay here in Bucharest. Thank you.
Try to be very brief, let me just say that cohesion as a concept is multidimensional.
Commissioner, please turn
Sorry.
Okay. Cohesion as a concept is multidimensional. It's not only about income differentials among countries. It's also about income distribution inside countries, inside economies. However approximate numbers are, but both matter a lot. And we see that even if income per capita may have scored enormous progress, if income distribution is getting worse and worse inside a country, then we have a very hot political potato on our plate. Secondly, it's about fairness. how people see and judge the way institutions do function, the way the social pie is distributed, whether they trust the future, their future, and the future of their children. And in this respect, there is a lot to say. And not much has been said today, but there is an increasing debate in the Union about it. It's about policies, whether policies are good or not. Sometimes politicians say there is no other way. This is the only way. It's not true. Even cognitively, it's totally wrong. There is always a better way to improve things. Finally, and this I will repeat what I said, it's the functioning of the single market. The moment we talk about the future of the Union, we should talk about the functioning of the single market. Is it God-given? It's not God-given. There are rules of the game, it's true, but even the rules can be improved. And if you ask, I would, with humility, but I would give a piece of advice to you, members of the Parliament, who represent the people, more than those who govern at one point in time, you, members of the Parliaments. I think if we believe that the social contract has been eroded over the years and something has to be done, you should think about it in your debates. You should probably set up a task force. Don't wait for the Commission or the new Commission to come up with something. Implicitly, this is talked about in the various documents. But you yourselves, you should think about it. Set up a task force and think, how shall we rebuild trust? Whether we should redesign the social contract. Otherwise, we'll invite many unpleasant new surprises in the years to come. So it's in your hands to do it. Otherwise, we'll see people disenchanted, people saying that they do not work for us. Thank you.
We thank you, both of you, for your input, for your comments, and especially for the final advice. Yes, we do believe that a kind of new social contract has to be built in order to avoid not only European Union to be undermined, but in order to avoid in the future to our societies to become a kind of feudalism high-tech, being the digital age coming faster and faster.